The last time we talked, we spoke about the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. It is 6 weeks later. Protests are still largely going on throughout the United States. And right now, Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis is lying in state at the Capitol Rotunda. And an interesting turn of events at the House of Representatives. What is the teachable moment? And can you talk to me a little bit about what happened this past weekend?
Maida, thank you. And this really is a moment that is teachable in all sorts of ways. What happened last week in the House of Representatives, frankly, shocked but didn't surprise me. And that is a member of Congress approached another member of Congress as they were passing each other on the Capitol steps for a vote on the House floor. And according to New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congressman Ted Yoho called her disgusting, said she was out of her mind, and then referred to her with the F word and the B word as he walked away. He did this in front of reporters. A reporter, according to the Hill newspaper, went up and witnessed all of that. According to Congressman Yoho, another reporter asked him, "Did you just say that?" And Congressman Yoho said, "No comment." It pains me to see what happened last week between Congressman Yoho and Representative Ocasio-Cortez. Now, she took to the House floor after Congressman Yoho bungled his apparent apology. And she followed the format that Congressman Lewis taught us 12 years ago. And that is, she named the incident, she named the pattern and showed that it was a pattern. She named the consequence of that pattern, and she said that Congressman Yoho, because of the dehumanizing and demonizing language he used against me as a woman, puts all women at risk because other men will take that as permission to use that kind of language and to act on that kind of language. Now, in Words on Fire, I talk about that very phenomenon, that the Simon Skjodt Center for the Prevention of Genocide defines dangerous speech as speech that conditions the society to accept, condone, and commit violence against members of a group. And it notes that dehumanizing lessens the capacity for empathy and triggers people to commit violence. That's what Ocasio-Cortez was pointing to. That's what Congressman Lewis was pointing to. And we engaged citizens can learn from that model. Now,
what do we do? Regular people, as we get to close this conversation, what do us regular people do about everything that you just talked about? Whether it's dehumanizing language that we've seen at the House of Representatives this weekend, whether it's the juxtaposition of what President Trump is saying and what's actually happening, or just all of this?
I believe that silence in the face of oppression sides with the oppressor. And it is the duty of informed citizens like you and me, of civic leaders, of people with a megaphone like journalists, of clergy, of those who run civic institutions, and of other political leaders to be able to recognize the pattern, to name the offense, to show that it is a pattern that leads to consequences, to predict those consequences and to let the leaders know we will hold you accountable. We now have 3 big neon glaring models of how to do that. We have Congressman Lewis, we have Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, and we have Secretary of Defense James Mattis. We can do this small. We can do this at the level of school boards, city councils, coaches. We can do this at companies. We could do this in society at large, and we could do it with the people who hold the highest office in the land. But we need to know that there is a pattern, what that pattern is, and that when we confront the people who are using that language, we hold them accountable for the consequence, and for responsible leaders, they pull back. Irresponsible leaders are held to the consequence. Now, there's free speech, but there's no consequence-free speech. And it is the consequences of that incendiary language that we need to look to and hold up and say, you can't do that.
Let's do it. And in doing it, That does not mean use dehumanizing language.
We need to model civility.